Hello and welcome back to the Jules with Jim podcast. I am your host GiGi and I hope you're well. If you're new, welcome. I'm honored to have you here. And if you're returning, I'm humbled to have you back. And to all my new subbies, welcome, welcome, welcome. You are the VIPs indeed. Thank you ever so much for the support. I hope you and I can share and learn, as this is a journey and not a destination. So, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, there are a total of 12 houses, and each house is basically a segment, or rather an area of life. Each house has a ruler, and that ruler is any of the 12 zodiac signs. So the 7th house is about the establishment of relationships and doing whatever necessary, or rather doing what you could do within your means to forge healthy relationships. And I already know what you want me to talk about, how sexy this house is, and how if you have 8th house placements in your natal or even your synastry or even your composite chart for that matter, how that means sexy, steamy, passionate sex. Sorry to burst your bubble. There's so much more depth to the 8th house, and I'm just here for that, and I hope you are too. So from the 7th house, we really do, because 7th house is such a, I don't even want to say it's such a light house, but it's definitely a lighter house compared to, the depths of the 8th house, because it's kind of like from the 7th house, we now step into the depth of the relationships that we have established and the relationships that we have forged. So regardless of what kind of relationship it is, at some point there is bound to be a fight or some kind of crisis, a breakdown of some sort if the relationship is, quote unquote, genuine. And how you will actually deal with these issues is, yes, as you guessed it, it is definitely an 8th house theme. So I don't even know where to start because there's just so much to say about the 8th house, but I will say that this is the house that represents the part of ourselves. Well, first of all, I just want to start off with that. The 8th house is that house that represents the part of ourselves which we just don't want anyone to know about, or at least until we're certain enough that, okay, we can actually cross this boundary. But until then, you're not really going to know a person that intimately. I think with the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th house, it really does take really, really intimate connections to kind of get to that point where you can really just bear it all and just be as vulnerable as possible. And those types of relationships are very intimate, so we should definitely not take those relationships for granted. And of course, all water houses kind of come with their own sort of flavor. However, it is important to remember that these are water houses, so water is deep. Water has no it has no boundary. It can go through virtually anything. So relationships within these houses, or especially when it comes to synastry and composite charts, it really does create another layer of depth to any type of relationship. It could be a parent and child relationship. It could be a relationship between partners, same sex, heterosexual, whatever the case is. Even with your pet, if if you actually dabble in that type of astrology. I know some people actually have birthdays for their pets. I know some people have astrological signs. They know the astrological signs of their pets. So it just really depends on the type of relationship, but any relationships that is established within these 3 houses is definitely something to take note of, because definitely there's something there, is what I'm basically trying to say. So this is the part of ourselves, like I said, we are not going to expose to just everyone, because like I said, the 4th house is really about our childhood traumas, and how deep and buried those memories are. And then you have the 8th house, which is kind of like, okay, I'm aware of all of those childhood memories and traumas, but I'm not trying to have everybody know about them. So these are things we know about ourselves that we intentionally hide from people, because we're just not really sure about people's intentions. Depending on if you have any planets in this house, this will kind of add to the paranoia, this will kind of add to the trust issues. So it just depends what's going on in your 8th house, but generally the overall sort of feeling, the overall sort of vibe to the 8th house is that these are the parts of ourselves that we really hide, or these are the parts of ourselves that we just don't want to talk about. I mean, who wants to talk about inheritances? Who wants to talk about other people's money? Who wants to talk about tax? Who wants to talk about death? Who wants to talk about loss? Things of that nature. And then you have the 12th house, which is kind of the house that really has no end. Like, it's just so boundless, it's limitless, it's virtually those aspects or those parts of ourselves that are hidden from us. And it really takes another person to have planets within our 12th house to actually expose those parts of ourselves. And when they are exposed, to really just kind of understand the type of person that we're dealing with, because the things that may be exposed by the person who has the planets in your 12th house may be for good or for bad. So of course, that's definitely, it's like the pros and cons of every house, really. So we really need to be careful about people that do have planets in these houses, who have synastry with other people who have planets in this house. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart. But anyway, before I go too off track, we are speaking about the 8th house. So yeah, these are the things that we hide intentionally. And I don't even want to say hide, because I mean that just makes it seem like it's sinister, or there's like an agenda to all of this. But honestly, it's just things that you just omit, things that you just don't mention. It's like all of our traumas, all of our insecurities, any kind of crisis we may go through, especially financially, money issues, as I'm saying, marital issues, intimacy issues, like you name it. These are all the themes of this house. So it's also the things that you just don't want to deal with. But it just seems like these themes just always just rear their ugly heads to the surface every now and then until you deal with them. And yes, those are things that we can, of course, on a surface level just fear, yet they could be things that make us powerful. The things that we hide generally are things that make us powerful, because one thing I've really noticed about astrology and spirituality is that we really need to get to a point where we accept and embrace our light selves and our dark selves, and really try and find a way to balance those energies out, because we have that within us. We have that part of ourselves. So we have that as part of being whole, rather. So I think it's very important for us to accept and embrace those parts of ourselves, and really try and find a way to be more powerful when you are learning to work with the energies, instead of really trying to suppress them and work against them. So yeah, as I'm saying, if we really owned up to the energies that the 8th house is really trying to convey to us, we'd definitely be more powerful. Definitely. Of course, it's not that simple. Navigating through the 8th house, navigating through the 8th house is such a big deal. It's like, imagine an onion and just constantly, uncovering each and every layer until you get to the core, or until you get to the nothingness, kind of. So depending on which zodiac sign is on the cusp of this house, anybody with that sign or planet in that house will automatically be in your 8th house. So my 8th house, for example, is in Sagittarius. So any Sagittarius sun, moon, Venus, Pluto, whichever planet, you name it, whichever planet is in Sagittarius, it will automatically fall inside my 8th house. And as I always say, to paint the bigger picture, we would need to observe the aspects to the ruler of that house, or even aspects to the planet Pluto, because as we know, Pluto is the original ruler of the 8th house. So I'm sure as you've gathered, the 8th house is about depth. Like I said, it's a how far can you go type of vibe. If you have any planets here, it just almost seems like you're just constantly evolving or just constantly going through transformations. Like it just never ends. And you're constantly going through the emotions attached to the experiences. And the emotions that you feel throughout your experiences are just so intense that by the time you really catch your breath, that's when you feel like you've undergone a whole entire catharsis. It's when you feel so deep that you just can't go deeper anymore. Then that's when the situation is now analyzed from a more logical point of view, and it's like you almost now have new fresh eyes and a born maturity, and you just manage to understand yourself and most importantly others a little bit better, because it is the house of psychology as well. So a lot of people with planets in this house, not to say that they can be great psychologists, although they could be, but they just really have an ability to get to the core of somebody's nature, which is awesome, because we all want to be understood. So if you want to be understood, maybe get yourself an 8th houser and see how that goes for you. So like I said, it's amazing because 8th houses, like I said, or even people that are Plutonian in nature, really have an extraordinary understanding of people. They honestly really get it. Your intense emotions, they completely get it. Your traumas, they completely get it. Loss, they get it. Death, they get it. They are constantly dealing with really gruesome and harsh realities. So they honestly get it and have the capacity to still empathize and have the capacity to still even advise you through these issues that we go through in life, honestly. So like I said, they have the psychology. They just know people's psychology, just put it that way. They would also make amazing detectives because they also have the intuition that goes along with just being able to get to the crux of anything, really. So the intuition is just constantly always on the money, excuse the pun. One thing I love and appreciate about this energy is that these people cannot be fooled. Whichever planet, if you have any planets in your 8th house, or if you don't have any planets in your 8th house, you can definitely look to the ruler of this house and see where that planet falls. So if, let's say, the ruler of your 8th house is in Scorpio, just look to see where Pluto is, and that's really where you just cannot be fooled. Like, you just refuse to be fooled. You will always be on some paranoia tip. And I have my the natural ruler of the 8th house, which is Pluto. I have it in my 7th house. So naturally, when it comes to relationships with people, I'll always just be paranoid as hell, especially if I'm still trying to really get to know you. I'm just not just gonna jump into anything just like that. Even with my Gemini moon, yes, I can establish conversations with anyone. I can have a conversation with anyone and we can really talk about mundane surface level stuff. But for all the deep kind of stuff, it's definitely gonna have to be over time. I'm also Taurus ascendant, so that kind of adds to the whole tortoise pace, if I could put it that way. So no matter what people say or whatever they think about you, or however you're perceiving the situation, you're either going to dream about it, you're going to hear about it, or you're going to just see it in some way, shape, or form. And trust me, however you feel about a certain situation, 99.9%, okay, maybe let me say 90% of the time, leave a little bit of room for doubt, 90% of the time you're just going to be on the ball. If you feel a certain type of way about something or someone, you're probably right. So any planets in this house do make you extremely paranoid, as I had mentioned before, and that's only because of the fact that you really just understand human beings. You know how people can be fickle, you know how people lie, you know how people are just not loyal, you know that things can really change at a drop of a hat. So it's because of this inner knowing that it's more about actions, words, and really people's patterns, and whether those are aligned or not. Because if all of those three things are not aligned, then trust me, a Scorpio individual, a Plutonian individual, an 8th houser individual is definitely not going to trust you at all if it's not aligned. And if your 8th house is just not aligned to that, or to that energy, then it's late. Trust is also a really big thing here. Trust and loyalty, also because the 8th house is opposite to the 2nd house, and the 2nd house ruler, natural ruler, is Taurus. So Taurus is all about loyalty. Taurus is all about trust. Taurus is all about longevity. So for somebody to really get vulnerable and deep with you, it would really mean that you are in an intimate relationship with that person. And in my opinion, it definitely takes time, because naturally you're just overprotective and just obsessively so about your deepest, darkest things. I mean, you're not trying to tell everyone your deepest, darkest things. Unless you are, then comment down below if you're that type of person, and let me know how your birth chart is set up, because I'd really love to know that. So I just can't stress enough how incredibly amazing this house is. And I guess you never really know a person until they kind of just bear it all, and they really just real and raw with you. And trust me, you will definitely feel it. I mean, we all have an ability to know when somebody's being genuine with us and when somebody's not being genuine with us. So it's honestly like getting undressed in front of someone, and not in the sexy type of way, but like in the really, like, you're gonna get a chance to see every scar on my body type of vibe. You're gonna get to see every stretch marks. You're gonna get to see my flab, my overhangs, my my saggy breasts, my this, that, and the third. It really is that intense. So I think the most important thing I've learned about the 8th house, and I think I've said this in my Scorpio and Pluto video, I think I might have said this, I have my North Node in Sagittarius here. So I think the 8th house, of course, has a theme of control, because Pluto is just that planet that just wants to be in control. Like, it has to be in control, it has to be leading, it has to be the one in control. I don't know how many times I can emphasize that. So because of that, it's really about letting go, learning to let go, and let the universe just deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. Because at the end of the day, things that are happening to you have been preordained, have been signed off. So you kind of have to get to a place where it's like, okay, I'm going through this because I obviously need to learn a lesson. I obviously need to transmute this energy and turn it into something powerful. I obviously am here to learn something from this experience and really walk away with that, instead of using the energy in a negative way and being jealous, and acting irrationally or based on emotions. It really just is about internalizing it, seeing the lesson, and kind of moving on with that and using that as your power, as part of your story. So learn to let go of the control 8th houses or Plutonian types, or really Scorpio dominant people, because the 8th house already just deals with loss. It deals with sorrow. It deals with depth. It deals with hidden things pertaining to our security, how secure things and people make us feel, insecurities within ourselves in general. Just there's a lot. And truthfully, I've just come to realize with this placement as well, I will need to know that I will grow through loss, basically. My transformation will be through loss. That is the point. Whether that be I lose people, I lose money, I lose, all of the 8th house sort of themes. I will only gain once I release. That is really the point. So, with me having my North Node in Sagittarius in the 8th house, sometimes I'll have to give up my independence and just kind of allow people to do things for me instead of holding on to my independence, which is definitely a 2nd house Taurus theme. Like I said, the 8th house is opposite the 2nd house. So, in hindsight, I feel like I've experienced this in my relationships as well, especially romantically and close relationships. I can see where I may have led my relationships to end because of my need to want to control how they develop, what people can and cannot do for me. Honestly, it was really all love, and I think in some instances it really was just a lack of security within myself, a lack of love for myself, and a lack of love for the person that I was with. Or maybe it could have, I would assume that it was definitely the right card to have played at the time, because obviously I cannot ruin what is for me, right? I cannot ruin what is meant to grow me. So either way, I still come out on top and I still win. Fortunately, I do believe I just can't sabotage anything that's really meant for me, period. So credit goes out to a TikTok video I saw by JLife20, a TikTok content creator, actually, JLife20, who expressed that the 8th house also deals with death. Of course it does. Death is one of the themes of the 8th house, as is loss. Loss can be in many forms. Loss of a loved one, etc., etc. So it can also be an indication of how you might die. Of course, aspects needs to be considered here. Doesn't mean it's going to be applicable for everyone. So definitely take what resonates and leave the rest. So it's not just about the sex, guys. It really is just not. For example, a Sagittarius 8th house may die due to just pure overindulgence, because Jupiter is just that planet that just has no boundaries, that just wants to be, all play, and just has, I wouldn't even say they have no discipline, but because Jupiter dominant people may have actually been raised by like parents who are pastors and things like that. So definitely there is an element of discipline, but it's because of that discipline probably that they just feel the need to just kind of overcompensate for that. It's like being raised by strict parents, and then the one time that you actually have a chance to go out, you just kind of like go all out and just probably never come back for like 3 days or something like that. So it's known for the planet of just expansion. So addictions and just not knowing where to draw the line can really be an issue here. So you might even die through traveling, whereas an 8th house may die to overeating, a natural disaster, but it tends to be really a very slow death. And then you have Aries. If you have Aries in the 8th house, it might really just be a really fast death. Like you may experience trauma to the head and you're gone just like that, or a really violent sort of like bloody death through an accident. And I definitely found this so interesting and so accurate. You definitely should go and check out his TikTok videos. Thank you ever so much to his beautiful soul and his knowledge that he has shared with the rest of us. So last but definitely not least, the 8th house deals with rebirth and transformation, as I've mentioned before, or transformation through rebirth, or rebirth through transformation. I don't know, however you perceive it. What I'm really trying to say is that you will experience rebirth and transformation in accordance to what you're here for. So, for example, if you have Sagittarius in the 8th house, you will find that you go through a lot, just period. A lot of changes, a lot of knowledge. You go through a lot of people, and no, it doesn't have to be in that way, although it could be, because I mean, the 8th house is, is the house of sex. So, it's a sexy house. So those with planets here will often find that their experiences liberate them through 8th house themes. So you might be liberated sexually. You might be liberated through other people. You might come across people who just tell you, no man, just live a little and, just unwind and relax, just travel, just, be independent, go after your soul's desires, or just let people do things for you, that kind of vibe. So, they will liberate you, and sometimes it might even be painful, because honestly, it's the 8th house, it's painful. Transformation is not amazing, especially since Pluto is that energy that just comes in and bulldozes. It's not really cute about anything. So yeah, it's gonna be very sore. It's gonna be very painful. You're probably going to be very emotional about your transformations, but transformations nonetheless, they will be, and you will come out a completely different person afterwards. So like I said, you might deal with a lot of changes. You could also deal with issues pertaining to freedom, boundaries, and just your personal power as well. And every other 8th house theme really that you can think of, and how they must be dealt in a Sagittarian way if you have Sagittarius on the cusp of this house. And if you have Capricorn on the cusp of this house, then it's definitely going to be different. You might find that you just constantly find yourself transforming in ways that will better equip you to be a better leader, or deal with and handle those above you, or when I say above you, I just mean position wise. I don't really mean, we're not trying to compare, but I just mean positioning in life. That's what I mean. How you can deal with and handle those people better, how you can handle other people's money for better or worse, depending on the aspects, of course. If you have Aries on the cusp of the 8th house, then it's the same story, because Aries and Capricorn are cardinal signs. However, there's also a theme of just running into situations where you just need to transform your outbursts, your anger outbursts, into energy that you could harness better. Leadership abilities. So you'll constantly just find yourself in positions where you could just use your ability to be sharp and direct and to be on the ball to help you become a better leader, so to speak. So you'll just constantly be humbled, to put it simply. Of course, tubers, take what resonates and leave the rest. I always hope to bring clarity to the understanding of astrology and the study and understanding of astrology, and I hope you have understood a little bit more about the 8th house and its influence. In my next video, I will be discussing the 9th house and its influence in our charts and how that translates into our real waking life. And on that note, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Show me some love and subscribe to my channel if you'd like and feel I have brought a value to your understanding of astrology. As always, your time spent is much appreciated. Till next time, you know what you do. So keep doing what you do. Peace, love, and most of all, light. I'm out.